Hello everyone, welcome to a new lab session. Now, this lab is going to focus on migrating a database to Amazon RDS. Now, let's go back to our cafe case. You remember in our previous lab, we created a dynamic website for the cafe business. We had our production environment and then we had our development environment. So we are going to build on this case, right? Now, the cafe business is growing and orders are coming in and then others. So it means that there is more workload in terms of storage and then processing power. So this raises a concern of, consistently upgrading and patching the database, and we might not have time to do all of that. So there is a need to have an RDS, that is a managed database system offered by AWS, to handle all those upgrades for us. So this lab is going to focus on migrating our database from our traditional database on EC2 instance to an Amazon RDS, which is a managed database service by AWS. So let's go back into what we will do in this session. So after we complete this lab, we'll be able to create an RDS instance. We'll be able to export data from a MariaDB database, right, by using a utility called MySQL dump or MySQL dump. We'll then go ahead to connect the SQL client to the RDS database, and it will now migrate data from the MariaDB that runs on the EC2 instance to the RDS database instance. And now we'll configure the web application to use the new RDS database instance for data storage. So before we begin, this is the initial architecture that we have. We have our EC2 instance that has a Linux 2 operating system installed on it. There is an Apache web server that hosts our web application, and there is also a MariaDB database on this instance, and there is PHP also installed, and now our cafe application that faces the customers. On this, there are parameters that are stored in the Systems Manager parameter store. That's the EC2 instance uses or assumes an IAM role to access these parameters. There is also a Systems Manager session manager, right, and a terminal in browser access to EC2 instances. Now, what the session manager does is we are able to connect, or we are able to SSH into our EC2 instance without opening up any port, right, without opening up any SSH port. So that is what the session manager does. It's just like you connecting with Instance Connect, PuTTY, or your terminal. But what those utility does is that you have to open up a port, right? A port 22 for SSH. But this one doesn't open up any port. Okay, that is the difference. So we'll connect to the terminal via the Systems Manager, Session Manager. So this is the initial architecture that we have. Now, after we finish this lab, we are going to have this final architecture. Okay, we'll remove the MariaDB database from our EC2 instance. But before that, we will create an RDS instance, and we will have the data exported onto a file. We'll open a TCP port 3306 onto the RDS database that we created, and we will now import the data that we exported from the MariaDB onto the RDS instance. And then we'll go ahead and terminate the MariaDB. Every other thing remains the same, but for the parameter store on the Systems Manager, we'll also update the parameters on that to suit the new RDS instance, and we'll now verify if this connection is working, and we verify that the cafe application is correctly working with our RDS MariaDB instance. So I'll end the video here, and I'll see you in the next video for the task itself.